Right. Hello and welcome to episode 53 of the ReptiChat podcast, the only podcast in the UK dedicated to bringing you cold-blooded content every fortnight. How are you, lovely lot? I hope you are well. I've got a great episode lined up today, but first, as always, we'll do a bit of housekeeping. So, first up, who's in the comments? We've got Fiona. Hey, Fee. Dan, thank you for being here. Matthew, nice to see you. Oh, pardon me. Bailey, nice to see you as well. Thank you all for coming along. I'll keep an eye on the comments as it's going. So, first up, where are we? Patreon. You guys are all on screen now. Thank you once again. Without your continued support, this podcast at the moment would not be possible. So I thank each and every single one of you. You're all stars. If you are curious about the Patreon, here's a few quick little bullet points that may stir you, change your mind. Or I don't know what the word is. I'm struggling today. It starts at £1 per month. You get access to the private Repti Squad Discord. You get early access to all vlogs and any pre-recorded podcast episode. And there are stickers. So, there's a link in the show notes below if you want to support the podcast a little bit more than a like and a comment. Next up, lots of people have been sliding into my DMs asking about merch. Now, this is exclusive. I have the first design made and it is sick, but I am currently struggling to find a supplier that can produce it to the quality that I want and at a price point that I think is affordable for everyone. So please bear with me, but it is just around the corner. Patrons, you guys will get a discount and you'll probably get access to it before like everybody else does as well. But yeah, it's there. It's coming as t-shirts and hoodies. I'm working on colors and like I said, I'm trying to find a supplier. So please bear with me, but it is definitely is it ball in the motion? I don't know, but it's coming, I promise. Finally, before I get our two guests on for today, as I'm sure you are aware, there seems to be a bit of a link between reptile keepers and people that have tattoos. I don't know where this love for ink and scales comes from, but the majority of reptile keepers have tattoos. And that is why Bobby of Rango's Tats has decided to support the podcast for the next few months. Bobby is based in Bishop Stortford at a studio called Obsidian Ink. And he is smashing at the moment. He's done some really, really cool pieces recently. And I am heading there on Friday as a birthday treat to myself to get a new tattoo. I did have a couple done in... when did I have them done? August, July, June? I don't know. Earlier this year from Bobby as well. Would show you, but it's cold in the studio today, so I've got a hoodie on. But yeah, so if you're a reptile keeper that likes tattoos or a tattoo enthusiast that likes reptiles, head over to Rango's Tats on Instagram. Get chatting with Bobby. Start your message with the word ReptiChat so that he knows that I sent you. Who else we got? Gail is there as well. Nice to see you, Gail. Thank you very much for dropping in. So now today's guests. Today I am joined by two tortoise enthusiasts that are far more educated than I am when it comes to our shelled friends. So please welcome Michelle of Scales and Shells and Babs of Spurthigh Tortoise UK.
Hiya.
Thank you very much for coming on. How are we doing? All right?
Oh, good.
Fantastic. Now, this is, like I said, I don't know if I did say it or not. This is your guys' first podcast, so don't worry if there's any nerves. The nerves will dissipate very quickly, I am sure. I'm really looking forward to this episode, actually. Michelle, since I started talking to you about it, I have been doing all sorts of research, and I'm hoping today we can educate some people on hibernation, dispel a few tortoise myths, and hopefully expand some tortoise husbandry knowledge as well. I think it'll be a good episode.
Yeah, definitely.
So before we jump properly into the episode, I like to start each episode with a little section called Get to Know. It's 10 questions that are this or that questions, and it just helps myself and the audience get to know you both a little bit better.
Okay.
It's not always particularly easy with two guests, so don't worry if you speak over each other. You can take turns. It's completely up to you. But if you are ready, we can get started.
Okay.
Awesome. So, first one, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Nice. That was perfectly in sync as well. Snakes or lizards?
Neither.
Lizards.
Lizards, nice. Frogs or salamanders?
Salamander.
Nice little split there. Spiders or scorpions?
Neither.
I like jumping spiders actually, so they're the only ones.
Brilliant. Butterflies or birds?
Oh, both.
Birds.
Nice, birds, and it was a both from Babs as well.
Yeah.
Grassland or woodlands?
Woodlands.
Yeah, nice. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Beach.
Nice. Hot climate or cold climate?
Hot.
Oh. Cold.
Nice. And then probably the most important question of the entire podcast. Take your time with this one. What is your favourite biscuit?
Mine's a ginger nut.
I like a ginger nut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like a ginger nut.
Nice with a cup of tea.
Oh, I don't know. That's a hard one, that.
No, it's not told you. It's the most important question.
Oh, God.
I like a bourbon.
I don't know.
I like a bourbon. That's what. No worries. I'll tell you what. For the entire episode, think about it, and I'll ask you again right at the end if I remember.
I know them, but I don't know what they're
frozen.
called.
Fantastic. Right, let's get into it then. So, Michelle, Babs, who goes first?
Sorry.
It's completely up to you.
That might have been my Wi-Fi. It cut out.
Oh, it's all right. Don't worry. It'll catch up with itself.
We can still see you.
Yeah, it's fine. I didn't even notice. It'll be fine. It'll catch up. So, I don't mind who answers first. It's completely up to you both. But could you give us a history lesson into your reptile keeping? Where did your passion for reptiles and tortoises start, and how has it evolved into where you're both at today?
When I was a little girl, I lived in a town called Borden, where there is sand lizards. And of course, they weren't as endangered back then as they are now. And I used to spend hours trying to catch them.
Were you successful?
I was once, and it gave birth.
Blimey.
It gave birth. It shocked me because I was like, what are these little black sacks? And then I realised it was babies. So I named it Lizzie and let them all go again. And I also used to collect slow worms. We had loads. They were everywhere in Borden, these sand lizards and slow worms. And then one of my friends got a leopard gecko for her birthday. I'm 44 and never even knew you could get anything like this when I was a little girl as a pet. And I was just fascinated with this leopard gecko. You know, she said to me, "Oh, come around and have a look what I got." And I went round there and I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." And that was it. It kind of set it off for me.
Awesome.
And yeah.
Fantastic. And it snowballed from there.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I did have quite a while out when I was raising my daughter and that. I remember I had house geckos, and I used to share a room with my big sister. And one day, you know, not very knowledgeable when anybody could go out and buy whatever they wanted in the pet shop because it was, you know, the 80s.
Yeah.
I bought some of these little house geckos, didn't shut the viv properly. My sister woke up on the top bunk, middle of the night. There's house geckos above her, crickets all over her bed.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. To be fair, I still come downstairs and find the odd cricket on the floor, or I've got morning geckos at the moment, and sometimes the babies get out as well, and like you'll see a baby walk across the wall or the ceiling.
I just sold my colony because they were everywhere. They were all over the house. Like my husband went to work, and they're in his briefcase. They were everywhere.
Yeah, I'm hoping my wife doesn't listen to
in his
this,
shoes and stuff.
Fantastic.
So
yeah, and then you've got lots of cresties as well, haven't you?
I do. I've got a lot of cresties.
Yeah.
I got a lot.
We'll touch on the cresties shortly as well, I think. So, Babs, how did it start for you?
Right, most really. I think I had one many years ago when I was a little girl. I don't quite know where it came from, and I don't know where it went. I'm assuming probably hibernated, and we just didn't know about those things back in those days. And probably about 26 years ago, I was in a pet shop looking at a tortoise. And I had the grandchildren with me, actually. And I said to the guy who owned the shop, oh, if it's still here when I come back off a holiday, I'll buy it. And then this old lady came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, I need to have a word with you outside. So I was a little bit worried what the
Bit
children had
ominous.
done. Yeah. So I went outside and she said, don't buy from the pet shop. She said, I'm a breeder and I'm in Woodley and I will sell you two. And they don't come from a pet shop and they've not been farmed. So you come and see me. So I made an appointment to go and see her. Hence to say I came away with two baby tortoises. My daughter came away with two baby tortoises. Hence to say I ended up with all four. But like most, I didn't really know much about them. She told me to keep them in a vivarium, which is what I did. I went to the shop and bought all the equipment to find out actually down the line, actually, this is not right. I don't know if you want to talk about this now, but
yeah, it's fine. We will get deep into it in a bit.
This is
but
how
yeah,
you get
for
on
brief.
Yeah. But that's how I came to get them. And I rescued two that were advertised, very, very poor condition. So they joined me as well.
Is that April?
Sorry? Yes.
It's one of them April.
Yes. And then I had two more from a lovely lady who's well known in the tortoise kingdom called Linda King. I don't know if you've ever heard from her. And she's known as the tea lady, and who breed or used to breed lots of tortoises. So I bought two from her. And somehow I kind of like ended up with 17 at one point.
Wow.
So yeah, my garden was pretty full.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. That's a whole bunch of tortoises.
It is.
Fantastic. So you're both my first tortoise keepers. I have had other reptile keepers on the podcast that keep tortoises, but I would say you guys are both tortoise keepers. I know, Michelle, you've got lots of cresties as well, but I would say I would class you both as tortoise keepers. You know what I mean?
Yes.
What species of tortoises do you keep?
I've got Spurthie and Horsefield.
I'm just Spurthie.
Fantastic.
And the reason I'm just pure Spurthie was because actually when I got them, I didn't know there were any other species. In my naivety, I assumed they were garden tortoises like I used to have many, many years ago. Yeah. And of course, how wrong was I?
Fantastic.
And I think if I feel like that, people must feel like that now who don't know anything about them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Before my wife and I got our tortoises, like I was aware of a few different species, but I was of the understanding that a tortoise is a tortoise. Some of them are big, some of them are little, and they're all the same to care for. Which obviously is very wrong, and we'll get into why so today.
Yes.
So tortoises are obviously known for their incredibly long lifespan when cared for correctly. So I figured the best way to start getting into this is let's dispel some common myths, misconceptions, and generally bad or outdated husbandry, so we can start advocating for a more modern and better practices. So I've got a couple that in my notes, and then once I've gone through them, if there's any that I've missed or something specific that you guys want to touch on, we'll bring those up as well. So first up, let's talk housing. So spending a fair amount of time on tortoise groups, especially on Facebook, it seems that vivariums are still very much pushed towards new tortoise keepers from pet shops. Quite a lot. Not all pet shops, don't get me wrong, but quite a lot. There's a lot always post, this is my tortoise, this is a new setup. It's in a viv, it's a bit of a crap setup. So what are your thoughts on this as a whole? Are vivariums okay? Should we be saying definitely 100% no to vivariums and only yes to tortoise tables? What are your opinions?
Okay, right. I'm going to take you back to basics first to answer this one. Every animal is evolved to thrive in their environment. Okay? Yep. So you have to have a look at the natural environment that they're in, that you need to try your best to recreate in order for them to thrive. Now, in the wild, tortoises are in big open spaces. They walk for miles and miles and miles. They live, it's just soil. And that soil is very important because they also use it to thermoregulate, as well as hibernation and, you know, hiding and things like that. They use it to thermoregulate, which is to control their body temperature. So if it's too hot, they'll go down. If it's too cold, they'll go down. Because once you get to a certain point, the temperature doesn't change too much. So in order for them to thrive, you're going to need to use topsoil as a substrate. That's so they can carry out their natural behaviours. Now, it's very dry where they are. It's not humid. You know, they don't live in the rainforest. They're a Mediterranean species. This is the Mediterranean species we're talking about, not leopard tortoises or anything like that. So you're going to need to give topsoil so that they can do what they're programmed naturally to do. You go and put topsoil that you need to keep moist, not wet, moist, into a vivarium. It's going to become very, very humid. It doesn't matter how many vents you put in it, it's going to become humid.
Yeah.
So the minute you put your tortoise in there, it's not evolved to thrive in that sort of environment. It's dry, arid environments that they're from mostly. And, you know, you get bacteria hanging around in the air and, you know, they just can't cope with it. So the minute you put them in a vivarium with the correct substrate, you're going to end up with a tortoise with an RI, respiratory infection. And so for me, absolutely not. And people say, oh, but, you know, it's too cold in the UK. No, it's not. Use overhead heating. You can use deep heat projectors. You can use ceramic heat emitters. You can even put tubular heaters. If you've got a big enough table, you can use tubular heater. There's all sorts you can use. I don't say heat mats. One, they don't get heat from their soil. They get it from above. So it needs to be overhead. I'm not a big fan of heat mats either anyway, to be honest with you. So, yeah, so that's my take on it. There is ways. You just need to monitor your temperatures and get them up high enough. We actually often advise people as well to add additional LED lighting to brighten the table up, because if you want to overwinter them, you need to trick them into thinking it's summer all year round, which is hot and dry and bright.
Yeah. Fantastic. And so, do you think there are any species that would be suitable in a vivarium? Are we saying tortoise tables for all species? The ones that we can keep inside, obviously not like aldabras and sulcatas. If you've got a big enough table, that's ridiculous.
Some you've got to keep in vivariums, haven't you? Like the redfoots and stuff. I mean, I don't know much about the tropical species at all. I don't actually think that the larger species should be sold in the UK, but that's just, you know, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So I haven't researched into them. I've got no interest in housing anything like a sulcata or anything, because in my opinion, most people can't house them properly anyway.
Yeah.
So I can't say, you know,
that's fair enough.
Because I don't know about the tropical species, but I presume they'd need to be kept in a viv, and I presume that would need to be really, really big.
Yeah, almost like a greenhouse as opposed to a vivarium.
Yeah, but heated, you know, really, really hot all year round.
Definitely. Is there anything you want to add on to that, Babs?
What, the tropical or the vivarium?
Vivariums.
So I've got a article, not an article, just a snapshot really, from a lady called Gemma Steiner, and she sums it up quite nicely really about what vivariums, why they're not good for Mediterranean, and exactly what you said, Michelle. First of all is poor ventilation. It can lead to mold, respiratory problems, runny nose syndrome. Poor temperature gradient, meaning you can't get the gradient that you need like you would on a table. A tortoise needs to feel the gradient to be able to act accordingly. Move away from the heat, for example, if they're getting too warm. A vivarium is consistent heat. All right, it might be a little few degrees away from the lamp, but it's not going to be that much difference. So if you're looking at a basking lamp of 32, the vivarium's going to always be round about, I don't know, 29, 30.
You'd have to have a massive viv, wouldn't you, to be able to get that sort of
gradient. Yeah. So in the Mediterranean, they don't have constant heat like that all the time. Even at night when the lights are off, there's still probably around about 18, 19 inside the vivarium. The next which you would say is the microclimate. Again, like you said, Michelle, the space is just too small to even create a microclimate environment. And this can contribute to illnesses. Boredom, because the space is just too small. Pacing, climbing, or, stress behavior, trying to get through the glass, or just simply sleeping and burying themselves because there's nothing for them. There's no stimulation. They can't forage. They can't feel the sun. They can't do anything out there. The front is glass, so they're going to try and keep getting through it. They don't realize what the glass is. All they know is they can see out and want to get out.
Yeah.
You can't get a depth of substrate in a vivarium because of the doors, so they can't bury themselves. So from that scale, I would say microclimate, the soil and the living space. It's way too small and it's too hot all the time.
Perfect. I think that sums it up pretty nicely. And so going on from them not having enough space, a common misconception that I had before we got our tortoises was that tortoises are boring. And in fact, once we got them, I'll give you a quick backstory. I have kept snakes, lizards, all sorts from most of my life. And my wife said, I want a tortoise. And I went, oh, really? They don't do anything. They just sit there. They just shell. Honestly, the first week of having this tortoise, I love our tortoises. They have got such a personality. They're always stomping around doing something, and so I can see that even unless you build a completely custom vivarium that is like 6 foot by 2 foot, which no one has space for a vivarium like that because it just doesn't work as well. But a table, I've got both of mine. They're in 6 by 2. Well, actually, they're like 6 foot by 3 foot. I don't know. They're big tortoise tables, one each, and they will use every single inch of that. And I can imagine, unless you're building a custom vivarium, that, like you say, they get bored. There's not enough space for them to do all the stomping that they do. Would you agree that they're ridiculously active and they have such fantastic personalities?
Yes, definitely.
I don't actually recommend that they are indoors from 3 years. From 3 years onwards, in fact, even my babies are kept in. It's a type of greenhouse. It's like a table with a greenhouse built on top.
Yeah.
So all of mine are outside. Babies, adults, Babs, yours are all in greenhouses, aren't they?
Yes, they are now. Yeah.
3 years old, they should be living out there permanently.
Okay, that's interesting. So I've got 2 horse fields, and they've been out in the garden a few times. Like I've got a run and a pen. That's like it fills my grass, which is huge. It's not huge, but it's big enough. But I don't. Yeah. I'm scared of keeping them outside all year round. I've got 3 dogs as well. I don't trust the dogs enough when I'm not out there as well. So I get them in the garden as often as I can. Yeah, well, my wife and I read an article somewhere that said the smell of a tortoise shell to a dog is the same as a rawhide bone. And ever since I've seen my dogs eat rawhide bones, I know what they can do to those. I was like, so if ever the tortoises are in the garden, either my wife or myself or our daughter is in the garden watching the tortoises, mainly to watch the dogs.
You could have the nicest dog in the world. It doesn't mean that it doesn't smell like a tasty snack to them.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, it did happen to one of mine. We just moved into my house, so we hadn't really built the enclosure. I put up a temporary enclosure, went to work. Husband came home, and I'd got several missed calls on my phone, and I was at work. And in the end, I had to answer the call and said, "What's wrong? What's gone on?" And he said the tortoise had got out of the pen, one of them, and I also had a tortoise light on the patio. So my husband looked out the window, he'd let the dog out, it was a Springer Spaniel, and he assumed that the dog was eating the lamp.
Right.
And on further investigation, he realised actually one of the tortoises had got out and he was having a merry old munch on the tortoise.
Yeah.
Thankfully for me, Bruce McLean was local to me at the time. He's a reptile vet here, or was in Berkshire. He's now in Oxford. Took the tortoise to him, overnight stay, antibiotics. Thankfully, there was no puncture marks that were serious. He
Oh, it's
did look
lucky.
like a beef burger, been eaten. He was chomped well around all the base of the shell.
Yeah.
Now, we would never have said the dogs would have done that,
No, no.
but even the most placid dog do. So from then on, all my enclosures had wire caging over the top. Nothing
Yeah.
could get it. Yeah.
No, so yeah, I'm very much the same. So we've got a Jack Russell, a Husky, and like a bit of a cross of everything. But I know for a fact that I would trust the dogs with a newborn baby, but
Yes.
a newborn baby doesn't taste like rawhide. Well,
No.
they might. To be fair, I've never tasted a newborn baby,
The
but I
thing is,
would.
dog doesn't know any different, does it?
Exactly, the
The
dog
dog
doesn't.
just
The baby.
smells like
No.
a tasty
So,
snack, you know.
Prevention is always better than
Yes.
anything else, and so.
Yeah.
But
And I've seen so many, and people say, you know, oh, but my dog is so placid, it would never do such a thing. Trust me, they can and they do.
Yeah.
They might not mean to do it. It's not their fault, but they do.
No, it's just their nature, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I'd like to keep mine in the garden a lot more, but like I said, I don't, without like putting a roof across my entire lawn, which I don't think my landlord will be very happy about.
No.
The tortoises are coming in and out when we're able to watch
Yeah.
them.
No, that's best
But
way.
it was
Keep them
always
safe.
good fun watching them in the garden, and like so normally they're housed individually, but when they're in the garden, because there's such a big space, we put them in together, and it's quite interesting watching them interact with each other for a bit, and then they go off and do their own thing, and
Yeah.
it's good because we put lots of stuff from the tables on the lawn as well, so they have got broken up lines of sight, and they can't just charge at each other.
That's
But
important.
it's good
That's right.
watching
Yeah.
them. It's good, and they like to act like little lawnmowers as well, which is handy.
I think that's quite an important point to make too, really. When people say, oh, I've got a big garden, I put them out there and all they do is just sit in their shell or hide in the corner or zoom around at 1,000 miles an hour. And I think you have to remember the climate that they come from. They're usually around bracken and rocks and things like that. You don't normally find them out in the big wide open space because of predators.
Yeah.
Anything comes along, they can dart in. So if you've got borders, shrubberies, lots of plants and things like that, they'll be happy because they can roam around inside that.
Yeah, one of
you've got a
mine,
big
as
wide
soon as you put her in the
space,
garden, yeah,
that's right.
as soon as you put her in the garden, she's like straight under the plants,
Yes.
and they can
that's
move
normal.
surprisingly
That's normal
fast as well.
behaviour. Yeah.
They're quick as well.
They're very quick. Once they're warmed up, little solar panels zooming around the garden.
They can
Yeah,
run so fast.
They really can. The first time we put them in the garden, I was like, "Oh, they'll be all right." I won't put them like we didn't have the pen at the time. I was like, "I'll just put them on the lawn. I'll watch them. They'll be fine." So I put them on the lawn. I went into the house to make a cup of tea, and like where the kettle is, the window looks out onto the garden, so I could see them. And by the time I'd walked like the 12 steps, turned around, one of them had gone. I was like, "Oh my god, where's the tortoise gone?" Panic
It
station,
doesn't
but
take
luckily
2 minutes.
yeah, she was fine. But yeah,
You'll have to have a look on our files at some examples for outdoor enclosures.
Yeah, I'll definitely have a look. Right, let's go on to another I don't know, myth or misconception, whatever you want to call it. Something that's very important to all reptiles, but especially tortoises, is UV. Without correct UV, tortoises can get some awful shell deformities known as pyramiding. I know they don't always pyramid. They do, like some of them are really bad and they look like pancakes, but lots of these issues are down to not having the correct UVB. Michelle, you mentioned to me when we were chatting, there's an issue of people ordering Amazon special UV bulbs.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on this? What have you seen people buying? Why are they no good? And what would you recommend?
Stupid, horrible little clamp-on lamps, and it's sold as a UV heat lamp, and they're on like a metal gooseneck type thing with a little black end and then a tiny little bulb plugged into the end of that. Now I've measured that with my solar meter, 0.02.
Nice.
That can you even class that as UV?
No, I don't think so. You get more UV off like the reflection off a wall.
I've heard lots of things about them catching fire. You know, you can't control them properly. There's no proper thermostat on it, so you could cook your tortoise.
Yeah.
Not even just tortoise. You know, any sort of I've seen people using them for bearded dragons and all sorts. It's like, oh my God, do you not love
It's
your
just because it
pets? Get
says
the proper
UV.
stuff. It's
because
I think
says
tested.
the
UV,
It's
problem
tried.
they're cheap to buy and they're cheap
Yeah.
imports, and people realise actually the bigger UVs are in their 30-40 pounds, sometimes even higher.
But there
These
is a
ones are much
reason that it's
cheaper.
that much.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what would you recommend people that are necessarily might be listening and they're like, I've seen those and I was going to get one, but well, I don't want my house to burn down. What would you
Arcadia.
recommend instead? Arcadia.
Arcadia or Reptile Systems T5, high output with the reflector. Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, I want to add there. I've been using combination.
I'm not affiliated with either of those, by the way.
No, neither am I. But yeah, I have been using Arcadia Pro T5s and the new Luminous T5s in my tortoises and with all the reptiles in the house. And I really like the Arcadia stuff. It all works very well, especially the Luminous stuff. It's really cool. You can control it from your phone. Again, I'm not sponsored. I just like it. And the lifespan of the bulbs is really good as well. So yeah, I would recommend Arcadia stuff as well. There is a comment from Fiona. She says files ? So what files? Well, you mentioned if you look in the files. So what files are we talking about, and where can people find them?
On the tortoise groups. Go on, Babs.
So yeah. So depending on which group you're a member of. So there's the Herman tortoise. There's Marginated. There's Spurthigh UK. And in those files,
Hampshire tortoise lovers, don't forget.
Hampshire tortoise lovers, beg my pardon. You will find at the top, if you're using a phone, you might not always see it, but definitely on the laptop, there's files and there's albums. And in the files, there are about tables, vivariums, microclimates, feeding, weeds, calcium, lights, all of that, all what we've been talking about this evening are in those files, and they can be downloaded and they can be read from there.
And loads of pictures of examples of outdoor enclosures.
Absolutely.
And indoor.
Yes,
and indoor, the tables.
Fantastic.
Yes.
There you go, Fiona. I hope that answers your question. And the groups, anyone can go and join them, can they, I presume?
Yes, they can. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Everybody's welcome.
Brilliant. I will try and remember to put some links in the show notes below after the episode. So if you guys want to go and check out these groups, you can. I don't know if I'll put a link to all the groups. I might just do one, and then you can probably find them from there. But
well, Michelle, I can ping over the groups that we admin and run, and you can pass them on, and that way you've got all the ones that we admin.
Yeah, definitely. And if you decide to go and join the groups, just leave a comment and tell Babs and Michelle that you came from the podcast, because it's always good to know where people are coming from.
Yes.
So, are there any other myths or misconceptions that you both see cropping up on like the Facebook groups or in your PMs that you want to mention before we move on to the next bit?
I'd like to mention diet.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. That. Oh, I've got cucumber for my tortoise.
I was going to mention diets later on, so let's do diets now.
A lot of
I feed them cucumber and iceberg lettuce.
Yeah, but also the more worrying would be that they seem to think that Mediterranean tortoises eat fruit and vegetables. They don't. They will eat them if you give it to them.
Yeah, if they've got no choice.
Well, that's right. There's choice, but there's also kind of like, it tastes quite nice, doesn't it? But it's understanding why they shouldn't be eating it. It's the sugars in the fruit. It's too hard for them to process. And the vegetables have got too much brassica in them. So you were talking about pyramiding earlier. So it's not just about UVB, it's about diet, UVB, microclimate. All of those things will cause pyramiding, especially eating pellets.
High protein.
High protein pellets that people, or they're being sold to people without them knowing what they're really being fed.
Yeah.
And it's fresh weeds and flowers all the way. You can give some mixed salads. Crispy floret, for example, is a good one. It's got lamb's lettuce and raquet lettuce and stuff. But it's understanding what they would eat in the wild. They don't find bananas or strawberries or the strawberries are the biggest one, aren't they? And peppers, I don't quite know where they get the bell peppers from, but they don't, and they shouldn't eat all of that because it's not good on their kidneys or on their liver. So,
And
yeah.
also the sugars, the high sugar content messes with the gut
Yeah.
flora, which can increase the worm burden. They all naturally
Exactly.
carry worms because of how they feed. And you put extra sugar in that mix and you're going to end up with a massive worm burden.
Okay, that's interesting. The diet is definitely something that I agree is very overlooked. When we were purchasing our tortoises, it was something that I didn't really think about. Obviously, you go into the pet shops, and my local pet shop feeds pellets for most part. They have been better recently, but at the time,
Most of
this
them
was like
do.
5-6 years ago. I was like, "Oh, that's all right. We'll get the tortoise. We'll feed it pellets, easy." And within like a week of owning this tortoise, I joined a couple of Facebook groups, and I was like, "Oh my god, what am I doing? Everything's
Mm.
I
wrong."
think we all done that at the
And
start of
then
owning a tortoise.
and then it was a sudden realization of, oh my god, my tortoise just needs to eat weeds all the time.
Mm.
And then my wife and I now will forage, and we'll get like a week's supply of food in one walk. Like walk the dogs. Oh, the tortoises can eat that. We'll take that home, put it in the fridge,
Yes.
and
It keeps in the fridge just like salad.
oh
I
yeah, it's really
put
good.
mine in like a sandwich bag, put a bit of water. Once you've washed it, bit of water in there, in a sandwich
Yeah.
bag or a lunchbox.
What we
Perfect.
do, we've got a big. Vicky's got a big tote bag. Vicky's my wife, and it's got a picture of a tortoise, and it says my weed bag, and so we'll fill that up, and then we'll come home, rinse them off, and then we've got the Chinese takeaway containers.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so each day gets like we fill a container. That's Monday, blah blah blah, and we put a damp piece of kitchen roll in there, stick it in the fridge, and it will last 7 days easily.
I think
But
the
learning.
misconception.
Go on,
Sorry.
sorry. No, that's
I think
right.
the misconception is that because we live in a fast world, takeaways, fast food, fast everything. You can buy anything and everything, dog food, cat food, whatever. So why not tortoise food?
Yeah.
It's logical, isn't it? You
Yeah,
can just go to the shop and buy it and it's going to last. But yeah, it's going to cost you money, but it's also going to cause fast force growth for your tortoise, which is not good. But actually, weeds and flowers are free.
Yeah.
And your neighbours will love you. My neighbours bag theirs up and throw it over the fence for me.
Yeah.
None of the neighbours ever moan. They all thought I was a bit weird, I think, at first when I first moved here.
It's when you're
But now
standing in
they
their
see
front
me
garden picking the
rummaging. Yeah,
dandelions.
yeah, they all love me. They're like, "Oh yeah, you help yourself."
There's a comment here as well I just want to bring up. This one's from Paul's Monitors, and he says optimized baby, and Paul is referring to Arcadia's optimized food. So they do the tortoise. I can't remember what it's called. They're like the blocks that are like
I
dried.
haven't tried that.
And then they also have the botanical blend, which is dried flowers and dried weeds and stuff. I've used that. Arcadia actually sent me a pack of the botanical blend to try, and it was really good. They recommend that you use it as like 10% of the tortoise's diet. Sure. So it's like a garnish. Just sprinkle it on, and it's a few dried flowers.
But I would challenge why you need to do that. But also, I'd like to look at the ingredients on the back of the pack or whatever it is that it comes in. Because
if Arcadia want to send us some to have a look, we'll happily have a look.
I'd like to have a look at the ingredients, because in those ingredients you'll find you've got hidden things like wheat and pulp and maize and other unsightly things. And if you look at the back of a pellet pot, you will be shocked at actually what's in it. So yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I'm open to anything, but when you start to look at ingredients, what's it bound with? No.
Okay, so the botanical blend, like I said, I'm not sponsored by Arcadia. They did send me it to try it out, but it wasn't a paid sponsorship or anything. They just said, here, you have some, try it if you like it. I used their botanical blend, which is the dried flowers and like dried weeds as well. And when it turned out, the first thing I did was look at ingredients, because I wanted to know exactly what was in it, because I'm really anal about what my tortoises get fed now. And I checked every single ingredient against the Tortoise Table app. And every single thing on there was green is fine to feed it every day, apart from one, which was like a feed it occasionally. Yeah. The other one, the Optimized 52, I'm just going to bring up Paul's comments as well, because he's mentioning it. He's saying it is 52 mixed seasonal weeds and grasses. It's cut from their habitat yearly. And it also says they don't have the wheat and the maize and stuff. That's what he's referring to. And optimized 52. It's not a pellet. It's a dried brick, almost like a hay bale.
I think it's a bit like pre-alpine, Babs. It has popped up like in my timeline.
Yeah, I've not used the optimized 52, but the botanical blend. I've
used a pre-alpine. Mine won't touch it, but you know.
Yeah.
Mine do,
But
some of mine do touch pre-alpin.
Mm.
and he says it's a natural option for lazy keepers. So yeah, it makes sense. Like obviously
Yeah,
they would
I think
benefit the best from weeds.
that's the concern, isn't it? Because when you start buying things like that, like you just said, lazy people, then they stop foraging because it's easy just to grab that, isn't it? And what we
Yeah.
have to remember is the weeds and the flowers that we pick, you don't just feed one variety, you're feeding of a good mix, which offers the full nutritional value of what they
Yeah.
need.
I think that
I
Otherwise, you
suppose
just
it might
feed
be.
them like us a plate of
suppose-
potatoes. You can't live on a plate of potatoes. You need to have the full mix for the calcium, the protein,
Yeah.
the vitamins and the fiber. The fiber is very important.
I suppose depending on the ingredients and all that, once we'd obviously had a look and whatnot, I suppose it could be used to bulk out food in the winter.
In the
Well,
yeah,
weeds
winter,
are
yeah.
definitely.
scarce.
So I think that's what I don't think. I know specifically the botanical blend. Arcadia themselves even say this isn't a replacement; it's an addition.
Yeah.
And I think the Optimized 52 is the same. Very much, you can bulk out the food as opposed to just feed them this. So if you
I'd
go
be
out and
interested to have a look at some
yeah, I'm
and
sure
see
that
what's in it.
I know that some of the people at Arcadia do like to listen back every now and then. So you never know; they might slide into your DMs if you're lucky. But yeah, I've seen it pop up a few times, and the botanical blend I really liked it. And if nothing else, it smelled really nice as well, which was good.
Leave it alone. It is not for you.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm sure I could probably eat it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open-minded. I'll have a look at, if I'll have a look at a packet. If I come across a packet and read it, I'd have a look and think, that could be an option for bulking my weeds out in the winter, because it does get harder to find them and you've got to walk further and all of that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, people are always messaging me saying, what can I feed my tortoise? I can't find any weeds.
Yeah, I find in the winter we use a lot of the crispy Floretta bags as well. Like probably do 4 of those a week, bulk it out between that and the weeds that we can find. But at the moment, there's
you can
loads
also
of those,
grow some. The little windowsill greenhouse things that you can get.
Yeah,
you can grow some. Start growing it.
That's not a bad idea.
In the summer.
Yeah,
I suppose that would help as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Just to mention, you mentioned the tortoise table earlier.
Yes.
And I think there's something that needs to be put out there, and I don't know if people know this, but the tortoise table is designed for every species of tortoise, not just the Mediterranean. So it does give fruit and veg. So when people say, yeah, but it says on there that they can have it, that's not for their species. It's not for Mediterraneans. They can only have the weeds and flowers, not the fruit and veg. So yeah,
definitely. I think the tortoise table is a great resource, but you can't use it as your only resource. So I can't remember what the name of the group that I'm on that I use the most for cross-referencing the food. It might be like the tortoise foraging page or something like that.
Yes.
But so my wife and I, we use an app on my phone called PlantNet, where it's a camera. You can take a picture of the leaves and you can identify the plant. Then I go to the tortoise table to see if it's like a yes, it's fine or whatever. And then I go from there onto the Facebook group for my specific species of tortoise and see if it's then safe for that as well.
Yeah,
you can use Google Lens to do that as well.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. I think
Mm.
that you can probably do it on the iPhones. Have just had an update and they can do it as well. But
and also anything on the tortoise table app that's green, you can also use for other vegetarian species.
Yeah,
such as Duramastics, dragons. Yeah, my beardie loves a bit of tortoise food in the summer when I'm going out picking it.
Yeah, I think once you get the hang of it as well, you don't need to refer back as often. Like we now probably have, I don't know, 20 off the top of my head, like weeds that I know exactly what they are. I know where they are on the walk that we do. So like they get picked all the time. I don't need to refer back. It's only those first I don't know, handful of trips where you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But you learn it very quickly. And if you
soon be driving around looking at it as you pass it. Oh God, there's tortoise food there.
I tell you, the best place to get dandelions is roundabouts. I swear, roundabouts seem to just grow weeds really well. But,
We've stopped before and got them.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I, we try not to pick them if they're right next to the road, because I don't know if the pollution affects them or not, but it seems that they grow. Everything grows really well right next to the roads. Like there's always so many massive dandelions right next to the road. It's ridiculous. Are there any other myths or misconceptions you want to mention before we move on a little bit?
I can't think of any. You, Michelle?
You don't need to cut their claws.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
That's another one I often get asked. Their claws are really sharp. Yeah, they're meant to be.
Yeah.
They need to dig down. Please don't cut their claws.
Good. I like it. Right. So, where are we at on my little thing? So, would you recommend a tortoise as a good pet? What are some pros and cons that people may or may not have thought of when thinking about getting a tortoise?
How long they live for?
I think the whole setup thing is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Because like me, they see them in a pet shop and they think, oh, that looks lovely. It's in a little vivarium. It's got everything it needs. The shopkeepers told them this is what they need to get, and they can pop it into their bedroom or wherever they're going to keep it, without realizing that actually after about 4 they need to be in the garden. And then they suddenly realize, actually I haven't got a garden because I live in a flat. So obviously it's not going to be any good to them because it needs to be outside. I've been asked, why can't it be like a cat, a flat cat, where they don't go out, but a house cat, they stay in all the time? Why can't the tortoise do that? Because they need natural sunlight.
Oh, free roaming babs. Sorry, just thought of another one.
They need natural sunlight, which they can't get in the house. Being under the hot lamps for so long will cause chronic dehydration in the end. So they do need to be outside. Free roaming, as you've already just mentioned, it's so dangerous. And I know people say, yeah, but you know what? I watch it all the time. There's no way it's going to be of any harm.
This is free roaming in the house, yeah?
In the house. And we had one we've had several, but one that's just jumps to my mind is when a guy was cooking his dinner and a 16-stone guy accidentally stood back and strode on the tortoise. Complete freak accident, didn't know it was there. But actually, if the tortoise wasn't free roaming, he wouldn't have got crushed.
Yeah.
Another one's been crushed in a recliner chair. And, so these accidents do happen. And we saw one a few years back where it had an x-ray, it couldn't go to the toilet. And when it was x-rayed, it had a child's charm inside its tummy.
Right, okay.
So it obviously foraged off the floor and picked up a foreign object and had to have surgery because it couldn't cast any feces or anything.
Blimey.
Dust, the particles from the carpet or the floor, drafts, plus they're not getting their UVB that they should be getting. They need their 12 hours or whereabouts of their UVB. They can't get that on the floor. They're not getting the heat and the warmth that they need roaming around the house.
Yeah.
They're not designed to wear cozies and fitted in little dog beds and things like that. They're reptiles and they need to be treated like one.
No, that's completely fair enough. Do you think that, I know you said that from 3 or 4 years old, they need to be in the garden. Do you think a tortoise can live? I don't know. I know obviously it varies from species to species, but for the Mediterranean, as we're talking, do you think that you can keep a Mediterranean tortoise in a tortoise table for its entire life, providing the tortoise table is, say, a minimum size of 8 by 2, 8 by 3, and it's provided with heat lamp, UVB, LED lights?
I don't even think that would be big enough.
Okay.
My tortoises are in 10-foot greenhouses and they've got 30-foot outdoor enclosures.
When I see mine, I mean, mine are big.
Yeah.
Big tortoises. I can't think of a big enough table that would keep them happy.
Right.
Yeah,
They
April's the
wouldn't be
size of a
able to
dinner
have
plate.
any plants or anything because they would just trash it. They're just too big.
Yeah.
It would have to be for sleeping at night only. That's the only thing I can say. Maybe bring, out in the day and in at night, maybe. But I don't.
But if they're out during the day, you may as well get a greenhouse and give them an outdoor enclosure.
Yeah.
And hibernate them.
With your outdoor enclosures, do you have to put them to bed every night, or do they take themselves to bed?
No, they do it themselves by clockwork, like clockwork. Come 4
Okay.
o'clock, they've all gone in through that little hatch and they're back in bed.
Fantastic. That's quite cool. Oh yeah, we've been looking at, or I've been looking at getting like a dog kennel type thing that's heated and then having a pen that the dogs can't get into. Especially for the summer months. The winter months are something whole different, which I'm going to use that as a really nice segue into hibernation. It's like that was smooth segue into hibernation. So I think that we've covered a bit of the basics, but hibernation is something that I think I myself and a lot of other keepers would class that as a bit more. I say a bit more, a lot more specialist. Now, hibernation is something that when I got my tortoises, I knew we were going to deal with at some point, and now I'm at the point where it's about time that I need to start dealing with hibernation. And honestly, the thought of putting my tortoise in a fridge is terrifying because my tortoise needs to be warm. Why would I want it to be cold?
Yes.
So, Babs, I know that this is where you sort of come into your element. So could you, basically the floor is yours. Could you give us an idea of hibernation? How does it work? When are they old enough? When do you start? When do we wake them up? And all that, all sort of in the middle stuff as well.
Don't forget your group.
Sorry?
Don't forget to mention at the end of the group, your hibernation group.
Hibernation group. I think, first of all, is understanding why we do it in the first place. And that is because tortoises, even in the Mediterranean, will hibernate, or bromate, as they call it, bromation. I don't like that word. I prefer hibernate, but that's just my preference. And in the wild, they will wind themselves down, stop eating, bury down, and come up again and go down again. We can't do that in this country because our winters are too long and it's too cold and it's often too wet. So if we allowed our tortoises just to do their own thing outside, chances are you'll not see them again, which is probably what happened to my big one when I was very young.
And if you do see them again, you're just really bloody lucky.
Exactly, very lucky. So taking their, from their point of view, some tortoises won't wind down. They don't want to. They're quite happy to remain active and happy. That's fine. If that's what you want to do, you can let them carry on. Judging by my own, from the age of about 3 years old, they've wanted to hibernate. They wanted to dig down, and I've tried other methods. I've tried the box method, I've tried the natural method, and those have failed. Okay. The box method failed because the temperature, the climate change over the years has changed so much. We're in double figures, even in winter. It's just too warm for them. So trying to keep a tortoise awake when they don't want to be is like bashing your head against a brick wall.
Right.
If they want to go to sleep, they will go to sleep. You can't force feed them. You can put the lights on. You can, make it hot as you like. If they don't want to stay awake, they won't. So you might as well let them do what is natural for them. I take their lead. As soon as they stop eating, I feed them every day. As soon as they decide they don't want any more food, like now, for instance, I don't bother anymore. I let them do their own thing. I leave their doors open. They can still come and go as they please. But now we're reaching, where are we? October now, aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's getting to a bit of a dodgy time of year because if I let them out,
mine aren't out no more.
Is go up the garden and dig down in the garden and they'll be gone.
Right.
You've got predators as well, don't forget.
Sorry?
Predators as well. That's one thing we didn't say.
I'm just coming to that, yeah. So the reason I can't leave mine out in the garden to do what they want is for 2 reasons. First of all, I've got clay soil, which means when it rains, it floods and it gets very, very, very wet.
Yeah.
And if they hibernated in that wet soil throughout the hibernation period, they're in danger of obvious flooding, which would be drowning, and also shell rot if they did survive. I also know that I've got rats in the garden, and I've also got a family of foxes. They would definitely dig them up if they found them. So it's not safe for them to do that. I tried to hibernate in the greenhouse. One went down, the others just sat on the top of the soil looking at me as if to say, I'm really, really tired. What do you want me to do? They had no clue. You know, it was cool enough. They didn't want to go down. And I tried that two seasons, and in the end I decided, you know, this is not working. I'm going to have to put the fridge in and start the fridge hibernation. It was scary, I'm not going to lie. The first time it was scary, but the second time it was fine. They don't know if they're in the ground in the cold or if they're in a box in the fridge. They have no clue other than that they're asleep. You know, you once they've gone into that induced hibernated state, their respiratory rate is low, their heart rate is low, they're in a deep sleep. They have no clue where they are. So whether you put them in the fridge or the greenhouse, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't make any difference to them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what is the process, I suppose? What sort of time do you start thinking about hibernation? When do they actually go in the fridge? And then are you checking on them? And there's more questions I want to ask. So let's start with those first two.
This is age dependent, really. So mine are all adults. So mine would start to think about winding down the middle of October.
Right.
But as I've said now, they're already starting to wind down. They're refusing their food. So they're in their first week of not having anything.
Okay.
So I'm bathing them every other day now, and they're not coming out. They're not doing it. Lights and the heat are the same, but they're not doing anything. They're just quite happy just to chill out and just sleep the day away, really.
Yeah.
They'll have a 4-week wind down, meaning no food at all for that 4 weeks. They wouldn't eat it anyway. They still have their lamps, and the ambient heat is still warm up in the 18, 19.
Because you still want the digestive system to work, don't you?
Yeah. So the idea of keeping them warm is to help them empty their guts. And I'll help them stay hydrated by bathing them. And if they want to drink, they've got water out there freely to drink as they want it. Come the 4th week, I will start to reduce the lamps time and their ambient heat. So by the end of the week 4, they'll have nothing. And it'll be a few days of real cooling down period. And by this time, they won't even be bothered whatever you're doing with them, really. They're virtually asleep.
Right.
And in the evening, I usually pop them into their boxes, leave them out for the night, and in the morning, get them in and pop them straight into the fridge.
Right, okay.
So while they're waiting in that wind down period, I'm getting my fridge ready. So I will monitor that for, say, 2 to 3 weeks whilst they're in wind down, monitoring the temperatures, adjusting it to make sure I get the temperatures right. I use thermometers that have in and out readings. So I've got the room temperature and the fridge temperature.
Yep.
And an alarm. Now, the alarm is very, very important.
Is that the Inkbird thing?
No, I just use normal. I don't know about Inkbirds, I'm afraid. I
The
just
one
use
that they sent you. One we tested them.
I gave up with those, unfortunately.
Oh, did you? Yeah. All right, okay.
So I used a normal probe thermometer, one in each box, and I can see what the room temperature is doing, and I can see what the temperature is doing inside the boxes. But before I use those, I would test the thermometers in iced water.
Yep.
To make sure that there's any discrepancy in degrees, and mark each one if there is a couple of Celsius difference.
Yep.
So I will know roughly on each box what the temperatures are doing. I set my alarms for under 2 Celsius.
Okay.
And then above 10. So in any time that alarm goes off, that's warning me that the temperatures have gone a bit AWOL in the fridge.
Yeah.
I've only ever had that happen once. I adjusted the thermostat and it was fine. Never happened again.
Okay. And what's the ideal temperature range in your fridge?
In the fridge would be ideal between 4 and 7 Celsius.
Okay.
So anything over that, I wouldn't want to keep them over 8 or 9 because they could start to wake up. Spurflies prefer it a little bit cooler, and I know Horsefields do. They prefer, well, Michelle can tell you about that because you have Horsfields, but anything over 10, they definitely won't be asleep. They'll be awake.
Right.
I open
That's
the door every day for air exchange. Some say that their fridge is fluctuating in temperatures too much, and that's to look at the space around the box. If you've only got one tortoise on one shelf, you need to fill the empty shelves because fridges work on bulk.
Yeah.
So like in your own kitchen fridge, you don't have it empty. You've usually got something in there. So would be to put a box on the top shelf, a box on the bottom shelf, just to keep the temperature stable.
Yeah.
I find filling a box with shredded paper and putting them on the empty shelves, that works really, really well. And then I open the door every day for air exchange to make sure and have a quick peek, make sure everybody's still where they should be. Mine are a bit big for boxes now. I use washing up bowls and shredded paper on top because they're too big. They won't fit otherwise. But I can have a quick peek, take the shredded paper off, have a quick look at them, pop it back again, and I weigh them once a month.
Okay. So when you're popping your head in and looking at them, what are you looking for? Anything in particular, or are you just seeing if they're woken up? Or
I am, but I'm also looking to see have they urinated. If it's only a little bit in the first week of hibernation, I won't worry too much because that could be due to overhydration, where I've been bathing them a lot. But if it happens within the third or fourth week of hibernation, you might, and it's a lot of urine, you need to get them up because it means they have passed it and they're open to being dehydrated. So they really need to be woken up, really.
Okay.
You're also looking to see.
Carry on.
You're also looking to see if they've got any runny nose or any diarrhea or swelling of their eyes or anything like that. That's just quickly a visual look, and you can generally do that when you're weighing them.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. I just want to jump back into your wind down quickly as well. You were saying obviously you're not feeding them and you want them to be well hydrated but have an empty gut. Why is that? Why do you want there to be no food in the gut?
If they've got food in their stomach, they can't digest the food. They cannot pass feces because their body temperature is too low. They need to have heat and warmth to be able to digest food and to pass feces. And we see this quite a lot when people say, oh, my tortoise isn't eating, they're not going to the toilet. And it's usually a temperature problem. A cold tortoise can't eat. So they refuse food. So until you start to warm them up, if they've got food in their gut, it can ferment and it can become toxic and rot in their tummy, and they can get septicemia and they would die in hibernation.
Right. Okay. That answers that question very clearly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I did. To be fair, I was under. I thought sort of knew why, but I just wanted to clarify, and I'm sure other people would be thinking the same thing if they're listening. So I know we're talking about Mediterranean species, but generally do all tortoise species hibernate that you're aware of? No, different tortoise, different things.
Sulcatas, the really big ones,
Massive ones.
Yeah, they don't hibernate.
So you got to keep them warm.
So you got So you got to keep them warm all year round and give them somewhere big enough. And that's after they've destroyed your garden, walked through your fence panels, dug a 20-foot burrow.
But there is also a spur thigh called the Tunisian spur thigh.
Right.
Yeah, that one doesn't eat, does it?
They do not hibernate. And sometimes people don't know they've got a Tunisian. And it's not until they come onto the group and show us a photo and you say, oh, gosh, you've got a Tunisian there. And then they're quite rare. You don't get to see them very often. And they said, oh, no, it's just a normal spur thigh. And it's like, yeah, but it's not. It's a non-hibernating. It's not as hardy as the spur thigh. So they don't hibernate.
Interesting stuff. And then how long are you hibernating them for? When do you know when it's time to wake them up?
So we give them a time scale and it goes by age group.
Right. Okay.
So I've got my little notes. I know what mine are. Yeah. Mine will hibernate up to 12 weeks.
Okay.
Because they're fully grown adults. A tortoise from, say, age 1 to 3, we say give them 8 to 10 weeks. A juvenile age between 4 and 8, we say 9 to 12 weeks, and an adult up to 12.
Right.
And this, of course, will go by you're monitoring them and you're weighing them. We suggest that actually, if they lose any more than 10% of their body weight, you need to wake them up, because it means they're losing too much weight too quickly. So really, although we give them an average scale of weeks to hibernate to, we say you must use your own judgment, you must observe them, and you must weigh them to keep an eye on their weight. And if you feel at any time that actually they're deteriorating and they need to be gotten up, that's what you need to do. Or if you think, actually, you know what, they're doing well, they haven't lost any weight at all, everything's fine, you could probably go another couple of weeks on that. But we do suggest no more than 14 weeks.
Okay. And then how often did you say you're weighing them? I know you mentioned it, but just to clarify.
It's once a month, every 4 weeks.
Every 4 weeks you're weighing them as
Yeah.
well. So I presume you weigh them just before they go in, and then...
That's right. So you take a before weight. So what they're going to lose weight in wind down, because they're not eating anything. So it's down to us to make sure they're fully hydrated, lots of fluids, lots of water. Take their last weight before they go into the fridge, and then you can then start to chart their weight when you weigh them every 4 weeks.
Fantastic. And then are there any circumstances or instances that you can think of when you wouldn't hibernate your tortoise, where although the tortoise wants to go to sleep, you're going, it's probably not a good idea for you to hibernate this year? What are things that you should be looking out for?
So we generally say don't hibernate, you've had them less than a year. And the reason for that is you don't know if you don't know the history of the tortoise, where they've come from, what their history is, what their background is. And also because any move in different environment and climate can trigger a hidden illness. Some tortoises, especially spur thigh, can get runny nose when they've been moved around and they get stressed. So this could trigger off any sort of illness or ill health. And during that year of looking after them, you get to know them and you get to know their little ways, and you'll know whether they're a bit off colour. And that's a time not to hibernate.
Right.
If they've had recent worming treatment, they need a good 6 to 8 weeks clear of treatment, because it really upsets their guts. It messes up the flora, and it can be quite challenging on their stomach, really. So we wouldn't hibernate, say, 2 weeks after they've had worming treatment, because they need time to recover from that.
Yeah.
If they've had any form of respiratory illness or any poor health throughout the summer, I wouldn't recommend hibernating. And another one, Michelle, let me think. Have I covered?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, sounds about.
Some
I can't think of many other things.
If they haven't gained any weight throughout the summer, if you've been worried about their weight, so they might have only gained a couple of ounces or something, that would make me think something not quite right is going on. There is something called the Jackson's ratio chart. I know it's for wild-caught tortoises, but some people use that for Mediterranean, not for Horsfield, but for the Mediterranean, Herman and Spur. And they give you a chart and show you how to weigh and measure to see if your tortoise falls within the graph that's safe to hibernate.
Right, okay.
Sorry?
That's interesting. A bit like a BMI chart, but for
yes, it is. And there's the McIntyre chart for Horsfields. So it gives you a scale. Some people say, oh, I've used that and it said my tortoise is way too light, I can't hibernate. And when you look at their tortoise, it's gained a lot of weight through summer, it's been actively eating and it's been absolutely fine. I say, listen, that's just a guide. You know, if you know your tortoise has been great.
Guide for wild tortoises.
then go for it. You know better than anybody what your tortoise is doing.
Yeah, definitely.
So
like I said earlier on, they've got such a personality that it's very easy to see when they're not happy.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, we are going to start wrapping up now, but is there anything else that either of you would like to mention that we haven't talked about that you think is important to mention for tortoises?
I think so.
think we've done a pretty good job of covering it to start with
Yeah.
anyway. It's like a nice base.
Yeah, I think so.
Fantastic. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. So I do have 2 more questions before we finish off the podcast today. The first is like the official final question of the podcast that I ask every single guest. And that question is a double-barreled question. So I'll ask you both. You can decide. It doesn't matter who answers first. But the question is, if time, money, space, and legality were no issue, what animal that isn't a reptile would you like to keep? And also, what reptile would you like to keep?
Oh, I'd like to keep horses again. That would be amazing.
Reptiles, Bab, reptiles.
No, you can. It's an animal on its own,
Oh,
and then
okay.
a reptile as well. So you get both.
Yes.
So
See?
Any animal. Oh God.
any animal.
If I had the reptiles again, I'm afraid it would still be tortoises.
Yeah.
But I would
Any
have
particular
a different
tortoise?
variety. Marginated. I really quite fancy a marginated. Yeah.
Nice.
I think they're really pretty.
Yeah. Really nice.
Mm.
Michelle?
God. I'd love some tree monitors one day.
Yeah, I know a few people.
Yeah, I do too.
Any particular colour tree monitor?
I'd say I'm a big fan of Paul's Kermit.
Yeah. I really like Kermit. Kermit's lovely. If
Yeah,
Paul was still listening,
and
he'll
Raven.
be well happy.
Raven's
and then,
another one.
yeah, Raven's gorgeous. So a tree monitor maybe, colour undecided, and then what non-reptile would you like to keep?
Non-reptile. Haven't even thought about that.
I know. I like to put people on the spot right at the end.
A non-reptile. Dolphin.
A dolphin, nice. That's good. To be fair, I don't know if it was the last episode. The episode before last, somebody said pigs. So there's lots of variation. That's awesome stuff. And the final question of today for you both is: where can people find you if they want to know more?
You can find me on Spurthigh UK.
And Hampshire Tortoise Lovers.
Hampshire Tortoise Lovers.
We always forget about that group, don't
Tortoise
we?
Protection Group as well.
Yeah, TPG. I am on Scales and Shells on Facebook and Insta and TikTok, and my website is scalesandshells.co.uk. I've got a new phone number actually as well that's just turned up this week that I still haven't dealt with yet. So
No worries. That's fine. I'll do my best to put as many links in the description below as I can, so people can go and find you. There's a couple of comments as well before we finish up. So what we got? Fiona is saying, "Yay, Kermit." Paul followed that by saying all of his tree monitors are sexy, all 4 of them, and he also said that he will have a baby for you one day. Because I'm right. I'm sure Fiona said yesterday that their tortoise came from you, Michelle.
It did.
Oh,
Torpedo.
how lovely.
Yes. Dan is saying yellow gang. And then final comment is Fiona saying, "What a great answer," and I think that was referring to which animals you guys would prefer. So that is a wrap. Babs, Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you both for joining me this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll send you back to the green room, but don't actually go anywhere yet because we'll have a little chat once I finish doing the episode. All right.
Worries.
But thank you very, very much, both of you, for coming on.
Me.
And you smashed it for your first episode.
Thanks.
Well done.
Bye.
Bye. Well, folks, that's a wrap. Hopefully you guys and girls found it as interesting as I did, and it has given you some food for thought when it comes to tortoises. I think I have learned quite a lot today. Last but not least, if you want to keep up to date with me and the podcast, head over to your preferred social media and search ReptiChat. I'm sure I will pop up on there, except for X. I don't use that, and I'm on Threads, but I don't actually use it. There is also a link to Patreon in the show notes below. If you can't do Patreon or you don't want to do Patreon, please feel free to give the video a thumbs up, a like, a comment, a subscription if you're listening on Spotify or any other audio platforms. You can rate and follow the podcast as well, all of which are free to do and help the podcast massively. So yeah, that is all from me today. I have been Ben McIntyre. This has been a ReptiChat podcast, and until next time, bye-bye.